This is football. I am Kevin Clark. Just saw this tweet from Greg Allman, who covers the AFC South for the Bucs. Magic Johnson was outside the Commanders' locker room saying, "Please don't make this about me." Thanks for clarifying, Magic. I was just about to make that win about Magic Johnson. Just about to do it. Just about. So we made the whole pod about Magic Johnson and his influence in just the short time he's been Commanders minority owner over the past couple of years with Josh Harris and Mitch Rails and those guys. So I'll tell you what this is about. It's about Jayden Daniels. So we have 3 games today. It is 11:30 on Sunday night. We finally got a good game. We were waiting around for it. I was ready to go full CFP committee and to start railing against seeding if we didn't get a good game. And yet we got the classic, and there'll be a good game on Monday because Rams and the Vikings, those 2 teams are really equipped for a tight game. So I promise you, watch the Manning cast, watch ABC, whatever, but especially the Manning cast, you got to do it. But that'll be a good game there. I don't want to overpraise the Commanders because if Barton doesn't do his weird thing with the snap, or the refs accidentally throw a flag or something, or whatever. I mean, it was such a crazy play, and shouldn't have been a flag, but it just looked so weird. I'm talking about the 3rd down before the field goal with the Bucs before the game-winning drive. If any of that doesn't happen, this is a completely different conversation, completely different pod. And I'm not reading about Magic Johnson, right? And so this was a very close win. But I want to praise Jayden Daniels and what they've been able to do just year over year. Because if not now, when? So there's a stat that blew my mind that 3rd and 4th down tonight, Jayden Daniels completed 9 of 15 passes, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. Great. And by the way, Dan Quinn going on 4th down without thinking was awesome. That's when you want to build culture. Everybody always says, "Ooh, culture. We got to build culture." When you want to build culture, the way to do it is to trust your players, and that's what they do without even thinking. And here's the extra part of it. Here's a step beyond that. So they picked up 8 first downs on those I just discussed. But then in those situations, this will be next gen stats. In those situations on 3rd and 4th down, he threw past the sticks 12 of 15 attempts. And he was throwing downfield on those things. And this goes back to something that Dan Campbell told me, and I've said on the show a million times, but the point of going for it on 4th down partly is to strike fear in your opponents and say, not only are we going to go for it, we might take a shot. We might throw it 30 yards downfield. We might throw it 15 yards downfield. Or we might just give it to Bucky Irving and let him go 2 yards. We could do that. That to me is confidence, and that to me is culture. I think that the game sealing run that set up the first down that eventually set up the field goal showed me something that I knew what the floor was on Jayden Daniels. This is why I was so high on him coming into the season. And again, all these guys, whether it's Jayden Daniels or Bo Nix or any of these guys, call them doctor quarterbacks because they played 100 years in college and they learned so much about football. It's not NFL reps, but it's as many college reps as anybody's gotten in the history of college football. And you can't overstate that. That's experience. And it's in different offenses and all that stuff. But I knew he'd be able to throw seam routes, the vertical stuff. I mean, the stuff he's doing at LSU, which, and again, SEC football is as close to NFL as you can get, but it's still a huge gap. But still, if you can throw those in the SEC, there's a case to be made that you're probably going to be pretty good at throwing them year one, especially when you've played that much football, especially when you're older and as poised as he does, and have the infrastructure and the receivers and the skill guys and all that stuff. And but the way he's able to operate, so you can show speed at the college level. You can show pocket presence at the college level, even though he's gotten a lot better at the pressure to sack ratio from college, because that was his big problem, is that when he got pressured, he oftentimes went down. Okay, so he's gotten better at that. But what I don't think you can scout for, and you won't know until you get to the NFL level, is comfort behind the line of scrimmage when Kalijah Cansey's in your face. And that's impossible to scout. It's impossible to replicate in May on a field if you're working somebody out. It only comes, and it's only tested January 12th at 11:02 p.m., whatever the hell it was, and Kalijah Cansey's grabbing at your towel, are you the person you think you are? Right? That's the test. And he got out, he moved, he never wavered, he gets the first down. And when I see that, because we already know how good he is, the chemistry with Termicar and all that stuff, when I see that level of movement on a run that seals a playoff game, understanding again, the Bucs were close, and it was the Bucs. He didn't beat the Lions tonight. They beat the Eagles tonight. It's a different level of competition, but still, they just won a playoff game, first playoff game since 2005 season, that they won. But when I see that, I think, and this is kind of the take I'm getting to, that he is probably the most equipped to get to the elite level of football for quarterbacks. Mahomes, then, within that, obviously I think Mahomes is a cut above these guys, but you'd put Josh Allen there, you'd put Lamar Jackson there. I think that there's no young quarterback who has the traits and has proven a level of football and a level of comfort on a football field. I don't think there's a player who has shown to be on that track more. I'm not saying he's going to get there. I think he'll get close, certainly. But what I'm saying is, if you look at those traits and you see how he plays on a night like tonight, you see the poise. The poise is it. Like, the poise is 95% of why I've fallen in love with Jayden Daniels this year, and why all of the DMV has fallen in love with Jayden Daniels. But Peyton Manning said it on my show on Friday. He's as calm in the fourth quarter as he is in pregame warmups, and you cannot. You can't teach that. I know that's a cliche, but it's 100%. There's a reason it's a cliche. And two, I always do that. And then I say two. I never know why I do that. Can't teach that. B, you can't, it only reveals itself in the biggest moments. And we're going to have all these conversations. And by the way, the Jordan Love conversation is nuts, because last year he had some huge time throws against Dallas. But anyway, I don't want to do that right now. We're getting to you, Jordan. We're getting to you, Eagles. We're getting to you, Packers. But I can't look at this and say anything other than A Star Is Born. And you keep testing yourself. I mean, it's almost like boxing, right? It's almost like a boxing video game. You just keep getting higher and higher competition, getting in bigger and bigger moments, and then you find out what your level is. And when Jayden Daniels does that in the regular season, then he does it in a wild card playoff game. Now he's got it in a divisional game. Like, you're just seeing, hey, right now in 2025, where is Jayden Daniels? And I think the answer is higher than you think. Even if you think it's high, it might be higher than you think. All right. Great season by the Bucs. We're probably just going to underrate them again next year, and they're probably just going to win the division. Probably all going to pick the Falcons. I'm probably going to pick the Falcons. And the Bucs are going to win the division. Baker Mayfield runs. So watching this tonight, Baker Mayfield runs like he's annoyed and would rather be doing anything else, and he gets like the 11 yards and it just moves on. It's not our friend Kyle Brandt's like angry run. I mean, it is. Sometimes it is. He had one tonight. It's not like the typical angry run. It's more like an annoyed, miffed run. Just like, just again. Like, he runs as if he forgot his keys and he's running back from the car and it's cold. YouTube viewers just got a nice little visual. I want to talk about some other games here, the other two games. So it's funny. I've shared this conversation before. I talked to Joe Brady, the Bills offensive coordinator, in camp of this year in August. I said, "What keeps you up at night? What's the number one? That's the number one goal for this team." He said, "I want to win a game any way I can on offense. That's what I want to do. That's how we're trying to build this thing." And it was funny because that's happened on the offensive side of the ball, but it's also happened on the defensive side of the ball. And I think what the Bills did today in their win over the Broncos, which a lot of people were saying was going to be close. Now, I don't think anybody was outright picking the Broncos, but I thought that maybe the Broncos would cover. Maybe, I don't know. I think I said that to a couple people. I don't think the Bills were in danger of losing, but still. And yet, and by the way, the Broncos were supposed to have a great defense. Well, the Bills had 210 rushing yards. They kept the ball for 42 minutes. Okay? James Cook, 120 yards. Came the first Bill. This stunned me. The first Bill since Thurman Thomas to rush for triple digits in the postseason, according to The Athletic. That's pretty good. And how about this? Denver gained 247 more yards than Denver did. Buffalo gained 247 yards more than Denver did. The largest postseason gulf in 10 years. A decade. It's been a decade since there was a gulf like that. This is all via The Athletic. And the run defense, which has been a problem in spurts this year, no issues against Denver. The defense in general, after the Bo Nix deep bomb to Troy Franklin, which came on a blitz, so they stopped blitzing, but they maintained some exotic looks without the blitzes, and they did a really nice job with that. Their defensive coordinator, Bob Babich, Sean McDermott, obviously, the personnel is getting to a point, I think, where Damar Hamlin, by the way, should have been an interception today and got called back. I think you let that stand. Game was over. People were like, "Oh, it bounced." I didn't see anything. Look the other way, pal. But after that bomb to Troy Franklin, they changed the way their defense going. They got less aggressive, maintaining those exotic looks. 3.9 yards per play from the second drive to the end of the game. And now comes the heavyweight fight, which, again, I don't love talking about quarterback play like boxing matches, but in this case, like the teams, I know it's going to be Lamar versus Josh, but the teams are just so beautifully built in their own little way that I just want to see them knock the crap out of each other. There have been some hard hits. We saw that with Zion McCollum and Jayden Daniels today. We're hitting hard. We're hitting hard and we're hitting physical, and I love it. How can you not just adore the sport of football? How can you, I feel so bad for people. My son had his 2-year-old birthday party this morning, and a bunch of people were like, "Hell yeah, we're getting ready for football." And then I'm reading people and they're like, "Hey, what, is football still going on?" I'm going, no, what? No, get into it. And you can read books too. Look at A.J. Brown. Football is beautiful. But anyway, they're going to knock the crap out of each other. It's going to be a beautiful game. I think I'm picking the Ravens on the road because there's just so many ways they can beat you. And I want to see what the line is, because the line opened up, I think, a 1.5 for the Bills. But there's so many ways the Ravens can beat you. And Derrick Henry and that defense, which is getting so much better since week 11, it's the best scoring defense in football. And the way that they disposed of the Steelers just so easily. And maybe I'm just logo watching. The Steelers, to me, feel like a better team than the Broncos. Maybe I'm logo watching. And the Denver defense is probably better at this point than what the Steelers is. And I completely destroyed the Steelers yesterday, so maybe I'm just being a huge hypocrite. But that's the way I view it. So I'm picking the Ravens right now, but I don't know. Don't make that a final pick. Don't do it. If I pick the Bills on Thursday, nobody bring it up. All right. Meanwhile, that game is 6:30 on Sunday night. I actually have the schedule up here if you haven't seen it yet. Houston at Texas, 4:30 on Saturday. Washington to Detroit, 8 p.m. on Saturday. Monday night winner is going to be at Philadelphia Sunday at 3. And then beautiful, beautiful Baltimore Buffalo, 6:30 on Sunday night. God darn, that's going to be a good game. All right, so moving on to last game. Eagles beat the Packers. Again, you got to stop viewing quarterback play as boxing matches, but there's a lot of comps between these two quarterbacks. And now all of a sudden, I saw people were saying like, "Oh, Jordan Love's playoff failures." Matt LaFleur asked about Jordan Love's playoff failures. How were you, goldfish? How long is your memory? They destroyed the Cowboys with Jordan Love. He had some of the best throws. So when I sat down with Jordan with Matt LaFleur on the show, I was like, "What's your best throw Jordan Love made last year? Your favorite throw?" And he was like, "Cowboys, changes protection, hits Dontavian Wicks." Like, he hung in there. It was an awesome throw. He was making huge throws. He's had an inconsistent, choppy year. He gets hurt the first week of the season. The roster's not where it needs to be. I don't want to do the Justin Herbert thing from last night, but they can improve the roster. I'm going to get to that in a second. This was almost, it felt like he was treading water this year. I thought there was going to be a step forward. It wasn't. He played inconsistent at times. He was loose with the ball at times, and this was the cap on that. By the time I kept trying to talk myself into a Packers playoff run, and I just never saw it. Then you compound that with the stupid penalties. You compound that with the fact that they never showed up against any of the best teams in the NFC. 0-6 now against the 3 best teams in the NFC. And now we're going to get into this doom loop where, well, the Packers always compete, but they rarely win the Super Bowl. They only won one with Brett Favre. They only won with Aaron Rodgers. Like, how are we supposed to go on with Jordan Love? Like, it's going to happen now. We're going to have, I know how the media works. We're going to have these forensic examinations of the Packers organization. Now, some of that can be traced to, so the Packers don't have an owner, which helps them in a bunch of different ways. One of them is they can plan for quarterback succession because there's patience, because they can think things through and say, hey, we can take a guy 2 years early and let him learn or whatever, that kind of thing. But when it hurts, I think this happens sometimes with the Rodgers era, is there's no guy with $8 billion who's going to sit down with the quarterback and say, I'm going to fix this right now. I'm going to do like 4 crazy things. I'm going to just spend insane amounts of money and be a little bit reckless. Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need the extra move. Sometimes you need the big swing, which I think sometimes, and by sometimes I mean a lot of times, the Packers don't do. It's the reason they always compete, might sometimes be the reason they don't win the Super Bowl. But I think it's too early to say that's the reason that they lost this game. I do think they should add a weapon in the offseason because I thought one of those 5 wide receivers who are really good was going to take a step forward. Christian Watson, we'll see what happens with his ACL. But I thought one of those guys was going to take a step forward. I don't know. Like, they need a 3rd and 9 guy. They could just add a weapon. The defense, by the way, I was waiting for that defense to take a step forward. Guess what they did today? And the offense wasn't up for it. Here's the stats. Let me get to the Eagles here in a second. Here are the stats. Eagles limited Jordan Love to 3 of 11 passing and 3 interceptions on passes over 10 yards. Quinion Mitchell, by the way, targeted 6 times on those. And it was incredibly useless for the Packers. Average separation of 1.6 yards. That's good. Although I'm out on average separation. I don't understand it. I just know it's like the Vikings have a really high average separation because they let guys go free because they blitz a lot. So guys are open. Yeah, that's the point. That's the point of the offense or the defense. I'm so contextualizing that. Anyway, all of this to say is that the Eagles did their job. Jordan Love didn't do his. And, the slow starts. Packers didn't score for the first time in a half since week 7 of last season. And Matt LaFleur after the game was saying basically, even when they're doing quick game short stuff, the Eagles were there on it all the time. All the time. And it was really hard for them to get any momentum. They trailed, obviously, because of the Nixon fumble and then the immediate score, they trailed for 58-21 of the game time. There's 60 minutes in a game. Most time trailing since 2016. I would love to know what happened in 2016. I'm not sure I remember that. So anyway, $42 million in cap room, according to Over the Cap's Jason Fitzgerald going into the season. Really young team. I would love for them to get a little bit older. Love for them to get a little bit older, just understand what they are. And we'll find out what Jordan Love is. Remember, he's still a raw. I'm making excuses. If you just haven't played a lot of football, we don't know who you are. It's just how it goes. And Brett Coleman tweeted something I was thinking about a lot today where when he drops back, no play action, no exotic LaFleur scheme, when he just drops back, Jordan Love, 15 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, 77 rating, less than a 60% completion percentage. So he's just got to get better on those simple throws. Now, play action can help a lot. And it does. And LaFleur is an amazing coach. If you don't think LaFleur is an amazing coach, I don't know what you're watching. But by the way, how good does it look that a little bit like Tomlin, a little bit, where it's like he was able to make LaFleur was able to make the peace with Aaron Rodgers and have a bunch of years of MVP play or 3 years of MVP play, 2.5 years of MVP play. Like that relationship looks pretty good now. Pretty good. All right, last thing on the Eagles. I mean, to me, this was roster stuff. To me, this was, Jalen Hurts had his little cold streak in the middle of the game. Didn't matter because they were physical. Dallas Goedert was just putting people in hell, stiff arming, being disrespectful because they're big and fast and physical. And they didn't make the stupid penalties that the Packers did. They, in fact, celebrated it when the Packers did it and said, I'm good. I'm not going to do anything stupid. Like, that to me, if you were to say who's making these penalties, who's playing sloppy, who's playing too emotional, I would have guessed, especially last year, the Eagles, because that was a reflection of Nick Sirianni last year. This year, they flipped. And that's not good. That is not good. And, what Howie Roseman does is, and we saw Jahan Dotson score a touchdown today. He hasn't been great this season, but like people were kind of celebrating, like, Howie, that trade was a bust. Like, no, what they do is, first of all, they take flyers on guys. And the other thing they do is it's low risk stuff for traits based guys they like. So like Zach Bond, who, I mean, he's going to make $1 trillion this offseason, but they get him on a flyer and just try him out. Vic Fangio said, hey, I think this guy can play linebacker for us. When everybody else is looking at him as a backup and a special teams guy. Let's just take flyers on these guys. Let's hit on a couple. And that's the one thing they've been able to do really well. 2015, 2016, 2017, they were signing these guys who they thought could play. Maybe they got injured. Maybe they were in a scheme fit somewhere else, whatever. And I mean, that's a big thing. They study why guys are available, and then they study why teams, why former stars who've cut loose and had success elsewhere, like what reasons were that, right? So like, maybe I'm not explaining this right, but so like they know, for instance, I once heard this, that a guy who becomes expendable because of a scheme change, we're going from the 4-3 to 3-4, we don't need this type of linebacker, that's the type of player they're going to go out and try to get, right? So like they look at everything and they're just trying to find value in the little edges. There's little tiny edges. And so you end up with a bunch of guys, guys in the roster who can help you win a game. And just cut the guys who don't work. Just cut them. But then you end up hitting on someone like Zach Bond. You end up hitting on, today, Jahan Dotson, but that's not really a big hit. But you just end up, Mekhi Becton, great example. Mekhi Becton. Jets couldn't get him to move to guard or whatever the hell was going on. I don't even know what the hell was going on. A lot of people didn't do well in New York, but the Eagles figured out what to do with him. And then you add in the absolute studs on the defensive line. You add in the absolute studs in the secondary who are going to remake that franchise. Having that talent in the back end is going to remake that franchise. As long as Cooper DeJean's one of the most, look at the analytics, one of the best players in football this year. I already saw Mitchell this year tonight. Like, not to repeat what I said about the Ravens and the Steelers yesterday, but so much of what we call, they out-physicaled them or whatever, just talent. The Eagles are more talented than the Packers. Is that partially because the Packers are too young? Is that partially because they're just slower? They're just behind in their development as far as the years go? As far as, because the Packers are one of the youngest teams in the NFL, do they need 2 more years to be as physical as the Packers? I don't know the answer to that. I hope Brian Gutekunst does. Does he need to go out there and sign a couple of veterans? Maybe that's going to be the narrative in the offseason. But what I do know is the Eagles are a bunch of mid-career guys, except, obviously the rookies are going to change everything I just mentioned, but a ton of age sweet spot kind of guys, 26, 27, 28 years old, elite talent, hitting on draft picks. This is how you build a Super Bowl roster. And that's why I think the Eagles are going to make the Super Bowl. And we'll see that here in a couple of weeks. All right, we're going to be back tomorrow night after the Manning cast, little game, is the little Vikings Rams game, which is now in Arizona. In all seriousness, like, these wildfires have been horrific, and I was not surprised to see, just knowing geography, especially where the Rams are, which is north and west of Los Angeles and closer to Malibu. I was not surprised that they moved the operation. Thought they would. Just hope we can have a normal game and people can take their minds off that for a second. I lived in LA for 4.5 years. I love it. My wife and I got married in Malibu. Spent a lot of time in the Palisades area, a lot of time in the Malibu area. Never lived up there, but it is a special place. And so I'm thinking about the everybody affected in Los Angeles and that whole Southern California area. Rams Vikings is going to be a great one. We'll be back after that one Tuesday. We give another batch of great guests. Don't want to say who it is going to yet, but somebody we've never had before, and then somebody we have had before. We're going to have 2 episodes this week. You're going to enjoy it. This has been football. Thank you to Miles. Thank you to Flynn. See you tomorrow night.